Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. This is episode 53, dedicated to a man that led Major League Baseball with 53 home runs last season as a rookie, Mr. Pete Alonso. And as always, thank you for listening and downloading to another episode of the podcast. On today's episode, we have part 2 of our Best of 2019 series to close out the year. If you have not listened to part 1 just yet, go back and check that out. That came out on Thursday of last week. Part 2, we're going to replay portions of previous interviews that we have had on the podcast. My dad was our first guest, and then we had Garrett Grandy, one of my college classmates, former college classmates, and then Mr. Ronnie Roberts, a guy that I played football with back in high school. We are going to replay portions of those interviews today on the podcast to close out the year. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a trip to Indianapolis, Indiana. Then from there, we're going to go to the state of New York and then west to Chicago to replay literally some of my favorite moments on the podcast in 2019. Go back to your high school days. Those were many moons ago, as one of my teachers used to say. You were the starting point guard for Elmhurst. Was it 2 years, junior and senior year? Uh-huh. Okay. And I know that you had some stories from that. Not trying to embarrass you now. Not sure if I've heard this story or not. But if you were to go back in your high school days, who was the person or the team that gave you the business the best, where you were playing back and forth, and all of a sudden you knew as soon as the tip off, as soon as they got the ball in their hand that first time, you couldn't do anything with them?
That would probably be Eugene Parker. I graduated from Fort Wayne Elmhurst in 1974. Eugene Parker was the leading scorer in the city. Eugene Parker went on to play for Purdue University. I think he was drafted by San Antonio, but he chose to go get his law degree, and he was one of the most successful football representatives in the country. He had some elite athletes like Rod Woodson, Deion Sanders, Emmitt Smith. They were all his clients. Unfortunately, Eugene passed away about 3 years ago. But in high school, he was you knew he was going to get 35 points when the game started. It just depends on who he wanted to embarrass along the way. And unfortunately, I was one of the ones that he embarrassed along the way.
Piggybacking off of that, saying one of the best ones that was there in the city at that time back in Fort Wayne, you and I have gone to quite a few high school games together. Seeing guys like Chris Wilkes, who went on to UCLA, Kyle Godwin, Mr. Basketball, went on to Virginia. We've seen lots and lots of athletes throughout my high school career, and even after that. And then even going back when I was in school, you got Greg Oden, you got Mike Conley, Eric Gordon. Even when I was gone, Gary Harris came in and ran the city. How do you think today's players, high school, college, NBA, compared to what it was when you were growing up, and saying, are they better? Are they worse? Are they the same? Is there a divide? How do you view today's basketball players versus back in the day?
They're better. There's no question that they're better, because everybody is building off the next generation. Everybody is taking their cues from the previous generation. They're perfecting the skills that they had, but then adding to. And that's the way it should be. That's the way things evolve. You expect them to be better. Kids today, they train better, eat better, some of them, not all of them, but they eat better, they understand the game better, much better shooters. I mean, we didn't have the three-point shot when I was in high school, and now you see middle school kids who can hit the three-point shot. So I think they're better athletes as far as their basketball IQ. I think every generation, I don't think you have anybody from any generation that understands their game any better than anyone else. But as far as running faster, jumping higher, each generation does that better.
Do you think the AAU format or the program has aided in the development of these players that we are watching now?
I think, yes, that it has, although I think it's put an undue burden on a lot of kids in that everybody can't afford the travel. They can't afford the hotel rooms. They can't afford to get the sponsors. And so what you end up doing is that you see a lot of elite teams, and then the mediocre get left behind. But even like when you were leaving high school, anybody, I shouldn't use the word anybody, but a lot of kids can play college basketball at NAIA level, D3, D2. They don't all have to be D1 or in the power conferences. And so a lot of times AAU is just is for those D1 athletes, and the D2, D3 athletes kind of get pushed behind.
Yeah.
But a college degree from a D3 school is just as valuable as you get from a Big Ten school.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't get to talk to you about this before. You may have seen it in the paper, but there was a guy named I think his name's Jalen Ivey. Jalen Ivey's going to Mishawaka Marion. Was going to. Took the same route as Keon Brooks did the previous year. Keon Brooks played at Fort Wayne North Side, ended up transferring to La Lemire up in the Northwest Indiana area. Jaden Ivey, same thing. I don't know what the situation was at his school. We got more inside scoop at Fort Wayne. We got family up there. But Jaden Ivey decided to go from Mishawaka Marion, potential Mr. Basketball candidate, just like Keon Brooks was, to go to La Lemire his senior year. And we had talked about going to the Hall of Fame Classic in Newcastle. Mishawaka Marion, which is a program, a one-day event where you have to apply. Your school has to apply to play there, and they're looking not just for a good team, looking for a star. They want a star to go there. Newcastle, the biggest high school gym in the country. And I was thinking about that, and we had talked about that numerous times. But I'm thinking about Jaden Ivey, not Chris Wilkes, excuse me. He said at North Central, but Keon Brooks. They both potential Mr. Basketball candidates in a year where you probably have 5 or 6 guys that could be Mr. Basketball. It's not like there's one guy that's going to be the front runner the whole time. And to go from a school where you've been with your boys the whole time, you've been playing with the same guys, sometimes since you were a little kid, to go from your school to go play to a prep school where you're forsaking not just your senior year with your boys, with your teammates, that you could possibly go to a state title. You're also forsaking the chance to win Mr. Basketball. And you and I discussed this, where Mr. Basketball holds weight to a lot of fans, doesn't hold the same weight with a lot of players. And I just, in my mind, thinking about what he could be losing. Now, granted, he's going to get everyday training focused around basketball, focused around the sport that he loves. He's not going to be having to there's class, but it's not the class aspect where it's like your homework and all this stuff. They still do that, but you're getting more basketball centered training. And I think that's great. But if you're going to be forsaking your senior year, potential Mr. Basketball, potential Indiana All-Star, where you can name, I could go down a list of guys that have been maybe they weren't Indiana Mr. Basketball, but they were Indiana All-Stars. They were ready to wear that jersey, go up against Kentucky and just beat them. I mean, it was more of a pride thing for the state. And I kind of agree with you the same thing. AAU ball's kind of changed the aspect of the landscape of the mindset of players. But also I think that's translated into our state, our city, where these guys are really, really good, but they're not. They think, oh, I need to go somewhere else to stay, and they're forsaking, like, well, I'm going to another place, a prep school, more basketball center training, but the ability to be Mr. Basketball, the ability to be Indiana All-Star, it's not the same that it used to be. Why do you think that kids nowadays don't cherish the ability? And I've heard Kyle Guy say that he wanted to be Mr. Basketball, wanted to be an All-Star. He saw weight. He saw that being a very prestigious award. Why do you think kids nowadays in our state don't value that like they used to? Because I've heard stories, guys back in the day, they lived for that moment.
Sure. And again, this is the outside looking in, and this is just an opinion because I have no idea what goes into making that decision. The parents, the players, and the advisors, and all the people that go into making that decision for a high school senior to leave his high school and then go and play at a prep school. Just from the outside looking in, my question would be, how much better is that particular player going to be at the end of his prep school season as opposed to being at the end of his high school season? Is he going to be that much better? Because granted, he's probably going to play against much better competition, because everybody that he's playing against at the prep school level is probably D1, a ball player, as opposed to a high school schedule where you might have a D1 ball player on every other team. And I get that. But that kid will be probably playing all summer against D1. But as a former school teacher, public school teacher, I think there's something valuable about your senior year. I'm just not talking basketball. I'm talking the prom. I'm talking about all the other senior activities that you have with students that you've gone through, maybe middle school with, high school together. And to give all of that up for one season of basketball where you think that, I don't know what the goal is. I think a lot of these players going into their senior year, it's already solidified where they rank as far as college is concerned. So it's not like you're in the top 100 and going in your senior year and going by prep school. Where are you going to go after that?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. I think that you give up the senior year, the graduations, like I said, the prom, all the senior activities. And then when you talk basketball, to be on the Indiana All-Star team is an honor. And then to be Mr. Basketball of Indiana, that's something you'll remember far beyond your basketball years, and people will remember far beyond your basketball years. And to me, looking back, I can't. To me, when those athletes get in their 50s, they will. I can imagine them saying, "Man, I wish I'd played at my high school my senior year."
Yeah. You were. I know you coached track back in Fort Wayne. Did you coach any other sports? It slipped my memory now.
Yeah, I coached 1 year of 9th grade basketball at Elmhurst High School. I was also a football coach, a middle school football coach, and a middle school track coach.
Okay. You've talked about numerous times some of the track athletes, probably because you guys won different championships, but you talked about how they remember you down the road, say, Mr. Stevens, look at this, look at that, families, things like that. Take some time to talk about one of your, I'm not trying to say single one out, that somebody may listen to this, but talk about maybe a few of your favorite, let's stick with track athletes that you had back in the day.
Wow, you're talking in the 80s and 90s. So here we are in 2019. So you know that's quite a while ago. A lot of these students are in their 40s now, and I remember Talia Barwick. I remember she was an outstanding runner, did well in high school. Kim Lubyhusen. A lot of these girls ran for Northrop High School, and they won state several times. And they had run for me in middle school. Tanya and Sonia Shepard, who are identical twins, they were also on Northrop's track team that Coach Blanks coached them at Northrop High School. So they were some outstanding runners. I'm trying to think of some boys. I coached boys track also, but the girls were the ones that really excelled in high school at Northrop, where they won several state championships. So I remember those girls.
Okay. You also were privileged to have a couple boys that played sports. I think the first sport that I ended up playing was soccer. Remember, you had us playing soccer, baseball, basketball. I didn't start playing football till 7th grade because I remember that I missed soccer sign-ups that year. So I was like, let's go ahead and play football at Belzer. Had no idea what I was doing. Had no idea how to put my pads into my pants. But you being a sports dad, having one of your sons, my brother, playing football above the collegiate level, what are some things you remember most about being a sports dad? Sitting in the stands, or sometimes you had the camcorder out recording games. What are some things you remember as being a sports dad?
Well, I know what sports do for young men in the maturation of young men, understanding what it's like to be on a team, understanding what it's like for other people to depend on your talents to help to contribute toward the success of the team. I know that that's what you all were learning. Also making friends and understanding how a coach will give you a plan and say, let's go out and do that plan, and just to enjoy it while you enjoy it. I know you guys played a lot of soccer, and then once you decide to play football, I think you had a lot of success, especially at the middle school level, and also a lot at the high school level. And so it's nothing like a father to be up in the stands and see his sons, perform out on the field, watching you play basketball. And even as you're an adult, I mean, sometimes you were with groups and you'd go down to Bankers Life Fieldhouse.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
weren't playing with the Pacers, but you were playing after the Pacers. But you played on the floor after the Pacers had played late at night around 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
But, you know, just to see you out there and to cheer you on, I've always enjoyed that.
Have you ever thought about making your own podcast? It seems like that's the in thing right now. Well, do I have the people for you? Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and extremely easy to use. And now, Anchor will match with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid for podcasting right away. To get started, go to anchor.fm/start. Once again, that's anchor.fm/start.
All right, Garrett, at one time, the Patriots had Jimmy Garoppolo, Jacoby Brissett, and they still have Tom Brady. How crazy is it to think about that two guys that were backups on that squad are now starters? One guy's undefeated. One guy is hurt currently, Brissett, which I don't like, but our team is actually, when we play at our best, we can probably beat anybody in the NFL because of our defense. And then you have, well, that's the Colts, that is, and then you have Tom Brady. How crazy to think about that those guys were on the same squad, and then how crazy is it to think that the two that were backups, they're now starters, and they're leading their teams better than anybody could have imagined.
Yeah, it's really a testament to the Patriots organization, Belichick. There's others that are involved, McDaniels. Really, probably a lot of credit should go to Josh McDaniels because, of course, he was a part of that group that was developed.
Don't say that name here in Indianapolis. He left us hanging.
I know. He did. That was pretty bad. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. As Patriots fans would I think, you know, maybe a little payback for the Deflategate, but for that saga. But yeah, that's a curse word in Indianapolis, I'm sure.
Oh, big time. Big time.
We'll just call him JM for now.
I like it.
but of course, a lot of credit goes to him, and it's really unbelievable. Of course, everyone kind of expected Garoppolo to do well. I think that was an expectation. I mean, of course, right now, I look at that team, I think that Niners defense, and there's other players that are carrying that team. Mm-hmm. It's tough to say that the reason why they're undefeated is because of Jimmy Garoppolo. I will say that honestly. He came in during that season when Brady was suspended those first 4 games, played really well, and now he's in a really great situation again. But it's tough to say with that situation that he's in, is Jimmy that good? He's certainly, I think he's 15-2 or 16-2 in his first start, which is unbelievable. One of the best starts ever of any career ever. And for him to come back from the injury that he had and play the way he's playing is pretty incredible. Brissett is a major surprise. I don't think anybody, including yourself, thought that when Andrew Luck left, you would be looking at this Colts team and saying, hey, man, we're one of the best teams in the league. And I don't think anybody thought that. Mm-hmm. I think everyone thought it's over. You know, I mean, it's back to rebuilding mode. We're going to, win 3 games. And, of course, you didn't even mention, but Brian Hoyer was the Patriots' backup. And he's starting. Of course. So you've got, the Colt. Yes, JM didn't kind of burn you, but you've got two former Patriots quarterbacks playing there, and he's serviceable. And of course, so it's really unbelievable the fact that those 3 were on the same team, and look at them now. Of course, I'm sure you've got to give some credit to Brady because, of course, with older quarterbacks, they are always, working with the backups, working with the younger quarterbacks. And, of course, Brady always gives a lot of credit to Hoyer for working with him. He said, he was incredible team. So I can see the reason why the Colts brought Hoyer in, because Hoyer can help Brissett and can work with him and can mentor him. And though Hoyer's not, as talented as, Brady, Brissett, Garoppolo, his mind and his experience, I'm sure, are being a great help to someone like a Brissett. I'm happy for Brissett. I'm happy for Garoppolo. I'm excited about it. I think it's wonderful. I'm glad that there is another team in the AFC that's making a run, because it's like we had talked about, we missed you missed the Brady Manning rivalry. We missed those years of, every year we were, they're going to play in the AFC Championship game or the divisional round or when they saw each other in the regular season, they were going to be undefeated or have one loss or, they're playing for home field advantage, and it was just back and forth every year, which I think that rivalry is the greatest ever. Manning and I don't think there's anything that compares to that for the length of time and the amount of big games that they played in. As far as those three, it's really incredible, or Garoppolo and Brissett, what they're doing, and I think it's really exciting. I think it's really good for the league to have young quarterbacks competing. Of course, I foresee that in the next year or 2 years, if you look at the AFC landscape, I mean, Brady's 43, 42, 43, going to be 43.
Something like that.
Of course, he's going to be, yeah, I know. He's going to be retiring soon. I know people don't want to think that, but in New England, but he is definitely, you could tell there's some age there. Some throws, he's shying away from hits. It's just a natural thing when you get older. You don't want to get hit. So,
right.
So I foresee that a team like the Colts with that offensive line is unbelievable. You've got Marlon Mack, who is great. He's great. Brissett's on the rise. You've got a decent brand new coach. Basically, is coming in there fresh. You're talking about a team that's on the rise, and so I foresee that. And that team just went into Kansas City and beat Kansas City with a healthy Mahomes.
Yeah.
and really beat them up pretty good. And I think a lot of teams are going to look, if I was watching tape on the Chiefs, I would look at that game and say, what do we have to do what they did that night and get after him and limit him. I mean, he still made plays, but what a win that was. That was spectacular. And I think that it's the story of the year. I really do. I think the fact that you have Luck retiring and everyone saying the Colts don't have a chance, they're in the division with the Texans, and they don't have a chance in the AFC. The fact that they're right there in the AFC is really incredible. I think it's the story of the year. I really do. And and of course the Niners too, with that group with Nick Bosa and what he's doing. But certainly with the Colts, I think to me that's the surprise of the year. That's the story of the year, and what they're able to do, and for them to even to say, are they a Super Bowl team? I don't know, but they can look back at this year at the end of the year and say, wow, we've got a lot to be happy about and build on. And I respect Andrew Luck even more now, looking back to say, hey, maybe he saw some things in this team that nobody else saw. Say, hey, man, we're going to be pretty good with or without me, and maybe even better without me, without the the dealing with the injuries and such, and so more power to him on that, and with Andrew Luck. But yeah, I think that's the story of the year, and it's pretty incredible what those three are doing. And of course, with Brady, he's still, I think, second in the league in yardage, which is insane. But he's 40. I mean, 42 years. But I think a lot of that is the, a lot of people say, oh, he's a system quarterback. I think everyone's a system quarterback to an extent, because you look at Manning. He was in the right system. I mean, Brady's in the right system. Nobody would argue that Russell Wilson is in the right system, which was my pick to win MVP. just to pat myself on the back, I should say Russell Wilson was going to win MVP at the beginning of the year, and I think he's going to win MVP. Especially if tomorrow if they beat the 49ers tomorrow, I think that's a lock for him with the MVP race. Whereas, and honestly, besides the Colts, Lamar Jackson is also right up there with being that highlight of the year. Like, who saw that coming?
He's insane.
Yeah. I mean, just last year, everyone was saying he's a running back or he should be a wide receiver. He's not a quarterback. And then he comes out week one. Now, granted, it was against the Miami Dolphins, which, but he still came out. I think he threw 5 or 6 touchdowns in that game. And everyone's like, wait a minute here. This guy's got an arm. So, and he's got a great coach. Harbaugh's been there a long time. And they've got a good young, group of players. You got Hollywood Brown. I think in the next year or two, the landscape of the AFC is really going to shift. You got Kansas City. It's going to be a powerhouse, no doubt about that. But I think you're going to see a lot of teams competing in the AFC that you haven't seen lately, and that dynasty grip of the Patriots is going to loosen a lot because it's just natural. He's going to retire. And some people think he's going to go somewhere else. I don't think he's going to go somewhere else. I think he's going to retire, and then we'll see from there. But you'll see a lot of those other teams that'll, compete in the AFC for championships.
Yeah, I don't get the whole talk of him going somewhere else. I don't see the reason why. I get Montana went somewhere else, and other quarterbacks, Brett Favre,
but Montana
went to 2
42.
other teams. No, true. That's true.
Yeah.
But you get like these all-time greats, they go to other teams, and it's the team sending them up. Well, Brett Favre was stupid. He didn't know what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
He just kept saying, I want to play, I don't want to play. All of a sudden, he's back on someone's team. But I don't see Brady with some of the love affair you may want to say that him and Belichick have, that him and Kraft have. I don't see him going somewhere else because he's still playing as well as he is, and he's been there so long. It's almost like, why would you? I can see if he dropped down and he was like a trash quarterback, he was horrible, and he wasn't able to do anything, like almost like worse than Peyton Manning was in his last year. But we haven't seen that from Tom Brady. So to think that he would go somewhere else when he's still winning in every single year, his defense finds a way to win games. They find a way to win the Super Bowls. Why would you leave? I mean, if it's up to me, I don't understand. Right. I wouldn't leave, and I don't understand why people think he would leave.
Well, he said in one recent interview, he said, I don't know why people are saying this. My contract situation has been the same for so long, and I know he wants his obviously he deserves his due. He wants his due. But his wife is worth so much money. I don't think it's about the money. I don't think it's about him and Belichick and Kraft. They all don't like each other. I think that's a joke. I really do. I think that there was some, issues when it came with Garoppolo leaving. I think that was a big thing for Belichick. I'm sure, deep down he wants to prove that he can win without Brady. But yeah. I don't think that Brady at his age, with the way things are, that he's gonna just up and go somewhere else. People say, well, he sold his home. Well, people don't realize he just bought a home in Connecticut, so it's not like he didn't just go buy a home and somewhere else in California or even if he did, it could just be he's moving on. I don't see him playing until he's 45. I don't. I know that they've said that. He said that for so long. I think there is some frustration there with the turnover at receiver. I think Brady got really close with Antonio Brown, and everyone says that he gets close with the players, even players like James Harrison and others. Players you would never think you would have seen in a Patriots uniform, coming back and saying, oh yeah, he was a great teammate, he was very helpful. So I look back and I think, same way with Manning. Manning is the same way. I think anybody you put with him is just going to be better. Any player you put with him, they're going to be a better person. They're going to be a better player. And so it's now Manning, of course, went to a different team, but he was younger, a little younger, and he still had some years left. And we don't have an Andrew Luck in the wings. Garoppolo, to me, I would say Andrew Luck is a better player than Garoppolo is, but he just couldn't stay healthy.
Right.
I certainly think if you had a healthy Luck right now, I think the Colts would win the Super Bowl. If Luck was there and healthy, I think they would win the Super Bowl. I really do, because that guy, he is a genius when it comes to that position. But anyways, with Brady, I don't foresee him going anywhere else. Do I think this year is the last year? I do. I actually do think this year is the last year.
Interesting.
I think because when you listen to his interviews, he's talking about, one day I know I'm going to wake up and it's going to be all over, and I've got to make preparations for the future. Whereas before, if you ask him, hey, he's like, yeah, man, I'm playing until I'm 45. There was no doubt. It was a no doubt answer. No, I'm still going to play next year. But this time, it seems like there's a lot more. He's reflecting. He's talking about his kids. His kids aren't getting any younger. His wife certainly wants him to retire. She's been wanting him to retire for 10 years, be home with his family. So what I would like to see is my dream situation, years in the future maybe, is, having Manning be a coach and Brady be a coach somewhere. That's what I would like to see. I think, personally, between the two of them, I think Manning would be a better coach because he's a genius. The way he ran those offenses that he ran in Indianapolis in those years were just unreal. I mean, today everything is so offensively geared, with the penalties, but he was putting up numbers in a time when it wasn't like that. And he would just blow you off the field in that dome. And he's right, obviously right up there as one of the greatest of all time. So, but I would like to see that, again, somewhere around somehow, some way, that rivalry restored. So,
it'd be amazing, man. It'd be amazing to just
maybe
watch football
or something like grow up and keep it going.
Competing in high school and stuff like that. That'd be fun to watch.
You live in Chicago. I live in Indianapolis. With the Colts not playing today, where I'm watching the Bears play right now, I know there's been a lot of talk all year about Mitchell Trubisky, the Bears, their offense, what's going on. What are some things you have heard or you have seen about this offense, the Bears, and primarily Mitchell Trubisky?
Well, I guess we could start off by saying, Mitchell Trubisky, having the Bears move up a couple of years ago to take him, as their first pick in the draft, it kind of got people's heads scratching as far as why would they trade up to get a guy from North Carolina to where they could have drafted Mahomes out of Texas Tech, or they could have went with Deshaun Watson out of Clemson, coming off of that national championship game. So, people here in Chicago are obviously scratching their heads, one, as far as why is the lack of production from Trubisky and a number of other players that are on the Bears offense. Now, I was watching the pregame as well as some of the statistics in the early part of the Bears game, and they said that he averages 176 yards passing per game.
Oh, wow.
And then also 5.6 yards per attempt, which, heading into those stats, it got me thinking one of two things, or a couple of things rather. One, he doesn't have a good quarterback vision or consistency throwing the ball, or he doesn't trust his offensive line to give him the ability to make plays down the field or dump it off instead of getting sacked. So, for me, and if you don't mind me carrying on into the Bears team and in total.
No, go right ahead.
The Bears team, in my opinion, is pretty much in the middle half of the NFL rankings. Their offense is probably, if not dead last, I guess you can argue, New York Jets, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Cleveland Browns of all teams rather. To be ranked in those teams it's kind of a little embarrassing because you go out and get Trubisky expecting the team to be in the top half of the rankings, but they're not.
Right.
And then also their defense is kind of what's holding them together, with Chuck Pagano. All Indy fans are familiar with Chuck Pagano. And by his guidance, they're ranked between 8th and 9th in the NFL in defense. That's total defense. Obviously, the rankings split between, pass rush, run tackle, that kind of jazz. So some people would say, the lack of success is due to the coaching. Obviously, you can argue if you're just a regular NFL fan, but, you and me watching it every day, watching it all the time, we can pretty much specify it takes every player to come together to play as a team.
100%.
So if Trubisky goes down, obviously you got Chase Daniel coming in, but it's not like he's, Tom Brady or anybody to put up huge numbers or, give you the wow factor, as far as showing you how a quarterback should play. But obviously with that being said, you need Tariq Cohen to stand out, Allen Robinson, David Montgomery, there's a number of other players, Khalil Mack can only do so much. So, with that, it's kind of the Bears. It's kind of I wouldn't say a one and done year. It's pretty much they're 4-6. They're leading 19-7 over the Giants. The Giants aren't, a ridiculously good team either. Obviously they have talent, but at the end of the day, you need to be 19-7 against the Eagles or 19-7 against the Cowboys, to actually put yourself in that position to, succeed and move up in the rankings and consider yourself a future playoff contender.
Correct.
So, yeah, I think that's my indie, roots, on the Chicago Bears.
Now, when I was thinking about this and Trubisky, the Bears, their offense, everything that goes into that, I was just wondering, and I want to ask you this question, something that popped in my head. Would you consider this just an early career slump? Most of your good quarterbacks or great quarterbacks in year 1, year 2, year 3, sometimes year 4, if they get that far, a lot of times they have a slump. You and I both watched Peyton Manning throughout his career, and he had an early career slump. Now he bounced back and he's an all-timer, but would you consider Trubisky, he could be a good quarterback, but this is just one of those fluke years where he's just slumping and not playing up to the caliber of quarterback that he can be?
That's a good point. I'm glad you kind of brought that up as far as not necessarily similarities to Peyton. Heck, Tom Brady was handed the Patriots on a silver platter as far as what, Drew Bledsoe had already established already and, that ridiculous defense. But at the same time, getting back to Trubisky, he's in year 3, year 4, if I'm not mistaken?
Year 3.
So, being in year 3, look at Russell Wilson coming out of Wisconsin. As far as he didn't have a slump coming into the league, he had a really good offensive line. Of course, he had Marshawn Lynch, and then their defense, the Legion of Boom. Most people are saying that's the best defense, since the '85 Bears. So for me, with Trubisky, I think he's getting hurt because he's holding the ball too long. Obviously, his injury consistency is 1 to none. Earlier in this game, with the Bears and Giants, he got tackled and his leg kind of buckled a little bit and he was up limping around. So they showed Chase Daniels getting loose around on the bench. And, long story short, I wouldn't say it's an early career slump. I think Mitchell Trubisky had a hard time adjusting from, jumping from North Carolina to being, the quote unquote superstar outcoming into the NFL to get, with the Bears. So for me, obviously, having trust in your offensive line, as far as me being an ex-offensive lineman, we went to the same high school and played football together. But, for me, my objective is to, make sure that, Zach Morris, at the time, didn't wind up on his back all the time. So, I didn't get to play on Friday nights like I wanted to, but that's a different story. So, getting back to Trubisky, I think for him, he's just scared. Like, he's running scared. Like, if he can't get rid of the ball, he's getting tackled or – for me, like I said, injuries are pretty much going to shorten his career. I would say maybe by year 6 or 7, he might retire. That's just me speaking because of the rate that he's getting hit. He's 20 for 34 for 250. This is a different quarterback than we've seen since week 1. And, for him, getting those guys, like Allen Robinson and Taylor Gabriel and then Anthony Miller, I think the tight end involved, takes the burden off of him, and then it gives the city of Chicago and the Chicago Bears courage, be like, hey, yeah, we drafted a decent quarterback. He just needs to have confidence in himself, and he needs to be able to get rid of the ball.
I was watching this game. Well, I actually was able to watch it early on from the beginning. Sometimes church kind of overlaps when I get home late, things like that. But a lot of the throws that he was throwing today,
it wasn't like sometimes it was just him making like regular like quarterback mistakes. So you're not going to be perfect every single game. But a lot of the balls were right on target. I saw he hit his tight end right in the hands, and then he dropped it. Then the interception that he threw when he was in the red zone, that's going to go out down as an interception and look as a knock on him. But it could have been a mishap. It looked like it was a miscommunication between receivers with poor spacing. You allow Ogletree to basically defend two guys, be right in the middle of them, and get the pick. Hopefully this is just a sign of things to come down the road. But I don't know, man. I mean, today he's playing decent. Like you said, better than what we expect. But I kind of like this Trubisky we're seeing today, except for, like you said, he holds the ball too much. I'm sure you probably see more Bear stuff than I do. I watch more Colts when the Colts and Bears are on TV. Is him holding the ball too long? Is that something that happens every single week?
I mean, from the games I've watched, in the past, like I said, he's scared to where he assumes that his offensive line is only going to hold for 3 or 4 seconds. Now, your average or higher average quarterback tends to get the ball out between 2.5 and 3.5 seconds. And I mean, look at Tom Brady; he's out in 2.5 seconds. If Wilson can't get the ball out, he's running around. The same with Mahomes. That's what separates the good quarterbacks from the great quarterbacks. And you also mentioned the interception in the end zone. That, for me, in my opinion, that's his lack of quarterback vision. His QB vision. Yeah. I mean, he's not 6 foot. I mean, he's 6'2", 6'3", somewhere in there.
That. Yeah.
So he's able to see over his huge offensive line, and maybe he didn't see Ogletree. He was sitting back there like a Sydney Duck. So, for me, he should have dumped it off to Tariq Cohen, or he should have dumped it off somewhere to where if they got in 4th down territory, bless their kicker, he could settle for 3 points. So, in my opinion, it's just having the courage and then going out there and playing like you're playing for your job. So for me, I wouldn't say it's a one and done year for Trubisky, but maybe they'll go the different route and put all their faith in Chase Daniel.
Yeah, you never know, man. You never know. Let's move from one quarterback in the Midwest to another, and Jacoby Brissett, a guy who going into the year, no one expected to start. We expected him to be our backup quarterback, even though Andrew Luck missed training camp. We all expected that no matter what, Jacoby Brissett, he may start week 1, week 2, but Andrew Luck would come back. Andrew Luck's not here. Jacoby Brissett's playing this season. Been okay, had a good game, been kind of better than what we expected at times, somewhat of how we expected at times. How do you view Jacoby Brissett and how he's played this year?
With Jacoby Brissett, I mean, he sat behind Tom Brady, so he sat behind, quote unquote, in everybody's opinion besides mine, is the greatest quarterback to ever play. Now, people can argue that, Tom Brady, had the fundamentals and everything to, continue to play at a high rate or a high level to where he was one of the slowest quarterbacks to ever come out of the NFL draft. And plus, he was a 6th-rounder out of Michigan. So most people specify, what if he wound up, with the Cleveland Browns or wound up with somebody else besides the Patriots? Would he have 6 rings? Obviously, people can argue and say he could have 1 or 2, but the defining factor is he wouldn't have 6 rings. Right. Now, with Brissett, coming out of NC State, there was a high momentum change from NC State to the pros, and he was probably jumping for joy when he got drafted by the Patriots. But, when the Colts got him, it was pretty much they were serving him up on a silver platter specifying, hey, you backed up Tom Brady. We've seen previous games to where you've kind of lit it up when they were blowing people out. So why not have you come in and back up Andrew Luck? And, with Andrew Luck, we'll hit on that for a little bit. So for a moment, rather, Andrew Luck was a big blow to the team, obviously because he retired. But, with that, the Colts had so much to look forward to, obviously making the deep run in the playoffs, having Luck at quarterback. Pretty much once he retired, that's old news. Brissett's up. He's the new sheriff in town. So for me, Brissett, he has played mediocre, but he's had, in my opinion, the best offensive line or the second behind Dallas and Kansas City. To bring somebody in like Quentin Nelson, one player to come in and be like, hey, guys, let's go out and knock these guys off the line, pancake them, and have fun while we're doing it. For me, what's capitalizing for Brissett is that offensive line. As long as they can hold for 10 or 15 seconds, however long it takes Brissett to get the ball out, then he should be a superstar. But at the same time, his inconsistency, this last game, he went 16 for 25 for $129. They relied more on the run game. Obviously Marlon Mack is out. I'm sorry. Jonathan Williams rushed for, 104 yards. Nyheim Hines ran for another 51. So they kind of relied on the running game this time. But for me, his hurdle is he can't close out games. Obviously, he can't get off of, the bench. He has to, scramble for his life if he's not passing it or running it, or rather, to where they can't get off the field and convert on third down. And that's kind of what's killing them. So the main thing that I kind of circled in my notes here is the fact that they have a hard time closing out games. They can't capitalize on third down, and they just can't really make the plays when they need to be made. Obviously their key objective, T.Y. Hilton, one of the fastest guys in the NFL, probably one of the more consistent hands, but yet he was targeted 3 times for 18 yards. Eric Ebron had four receptions for 44 yards. That's a tight end. Jack Doyle the same, had 3 balls. Obviously the list can go on as far as the achievements the Colts could have had if they would have capitalized on third down. Now, obviously, going against Deshaun Watson, Hopkins, Fuller out at Notre Dame, they could have went for far more points than 20 points on the Colts, to where, the defense is coming around, but they weren't able to get to Watson. The key thing is getting to Watson. And, with Brissett, just stay consistent. He has somewhat of a quarterback vision. He has courage because that offensive line's built like a wall. So at the same time, look for open receivers. If you can't find anybody downfield, dump it off. At least you're going to get 3 or 4 yards instead of taking a sack or throwing an incomplete pass.
I'm going to play devil's advocate real quick in regards to Jacoby Brissett and how he's played this year. Do you think, and some people may say this, do you think that his inconsistencies in every single game or almost every game this year are due to the injuries at the wide receiver position and due to the tight ends, Eric Ebron, not being consistent like he says he should be or he can be?
Well, for me, when you're naming, obviously there's injuries at the wide receiver position, but I guess everybody's saying, Tony Dungy, next man up. So if T.Y. Hilton goes down, Chester Rogers goes down, you have Zach Pascal, Marcus Johnson. You have some guys I've never heard of before that are, stepping in and, making plays or at least trying to attempt to catch the ball. But, Eric Ebron and Jack Doyle, Jack Doyle should be your number 1 and Eric Ebron obviously number 2. But I think Eric Ebron kind of runs around with his head on a swivel because he's either, one, afraid to catch the ball because he's going to get, pretty much blasted, or he's got stone hands to where he can't hold on to the ball. So, I wouldn't say the inconsistency from Brissett is the wide receivers, because you can dump it off to the running backs or just dump it off to Hilton or Ebron for 3 or 4 yards. But you see teams that have, players that are getting off the practice squad that are averaging 40, 50 yards of reception, obviously because of their open and the quarterback isn't afraid to throw the ball. So for me, watching the Colts and watching all the other teams, they have a cadence that they go through. So as the saying goes, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So, Brissett, they feel like they're getting by on the ground and they're getting by throwing here and there, to where that's not going to hardly get the job done, to where in the last, 9 games of the season this time, the games that they've lost, they've been 7 points or less, to where, we shoot back and be like, they can't close out games. The key thing is closing out a game, converting on third down, making sure you're the last person blasted through the line to stop, whomever's running the ball or whoever's trying to catch the ball. So the inconsistency, in my opinion, is not the wide receivers. Obviously, it could be the tight ends because the majority of them have been healthy. I think it's just more along the lines of completing the passes and not, putting all your burdens on the running game.
That's all, folks. That's all she wrote. 2019 is almost over. 2020 is just around the corner. Before we get out of here, we have some picks to get off for the week. So far with the bowl games that I have picked, I am 10-4. I went 5-3 between the games that were the 26th through the 28th of last week. We have bowl games Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this upcoming week. I have a few games to pick before we close. On Monday in the Music City Bowl, I have Mississippi State over Louisville. On Monday as well, I have in the Orange Bowl, I have Florida over Virginia. On Tuesday, I have Arizona State over Florida State in the Sun Bowl. I have Navy over Kansas State in the Liberty Bowl. In the Alamo Bowl, I have Utah over Texas. Sam Ehlinger said we're back, and that's definitely not it. On Wednesday, that is, on New Year's Day, in the Citrus Bowl, I have Alabama over Michigan. In the Outback Bowl, I have Auburn over Minnesota. In the Rose Bowl, I am going Oregon over Wisconsin. And in the Sugar Bowl, I am going Baylor over Georgia. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Dr_J25. Once again, that is at Dr_JAY, the number 2 and the number 5. Remember to always subscribe, rate, and review. It's a great way for people that are searching for new podcasts to listen to come across this one. Then remember to always get the word out about the podcast via word of mouth. The things that we enjoy in life, we are more willing and somewhat wired to tell other people about. So no matter if this was your first episode or if you have been listening since episode 1, be sure to let people know about the podcast. This has been episode 53 of the Jay Stevens Podcast. I'll see you next time.